The first thing Richard Vale's children fought over after his death was the piano. Their father's body had not yet been lowered into the ground. The flowers from the funeral still stood in silver vases around the drawing room, filling the mansion with the sweet, suffocating smell of lilies, and rainwater slid down the tall windows in trembling lines. Somewhere in the West Wing, an old clock counted seconds that none of Richard's 3 children seemed willing to waste on grief. "I'm taking it," Vanessa Vale said. Her younger brother Daniel looked up from the whiskey he had poured himself without asking permission. "You don't even play." "My daughter does." "Your daughter quit lessons when she was 9. Vanessa's jaw tightened. Across the room their eldest brother Michael gave a humorless laugh. "Both of you are unbelievable." Daniel turned toward him. Interesting coming from the man who had Dad's CFO send him the latest company valuation before the funeral. Michael's expression froze for half a second. That was all Vanessa needed. "You did what?" "I'm chairman of the board." "Interim chairman," Daniel corrected. "For 48 hours, Michael snapped. "Until the will is read." "Until the will is read." The words silenced the room, because all 3 of them knew what those words really meant. "Until we find out who won." Richard Vale had built Vale Meridian Holdings from a single warehouse into an empire worth nearly $2 billion. Hotels, commercial real estate, logistics, private investments, land, art, 3 private aircraft, a yacht Richard claimed to despise but used every summer, and Blackwood House, the mansion where his children had grown up, the mansion where they now stood sizing up paintings, furniture, and each other. Richard had not been an affectionate father. He had been a useful one, a commanding one, terrifying one, a father who remembered quarterly earnings more easily than birthdays, and who could destroy a grown executive with 6 quiet words across a boardroom table. But his children had never doubted one thing. Everything he built would eventually belong to them. Michael, 51, believed the company was already his. Vanessa, 47, had spent the last decade reminding everyone that their father had promised her the family real estate portfolio. Daniel, 42, had accumulated enough failed businesses, divorces, and private debts to need his inheritance more desperately than either of them realized. They all assumed there would be arguments. None of them imagined there would be nothing to argue over. At 3 o'clock that afternoon, Richard Vale's attorney arrived carrying a black leather case. Arthur Kessler had served Richard for 32 years. He was 76, thin, silver-haired, and so disciplined that even his condolences sounded legally binding. Behind him came 2 people no one recognized. One was a stenographer. The other was a large man in a dark suit who remained by the door. Michael frowned. "Who's he?" "Security." Daniel laughed. "You brought security to read a will?" Arthur removed his glasses and polished them slowly. "Your father requested it." Something about the answer made Vanessa stop smiling. Arthur sat at the long mahogany table. Richard's 3 children took their places opposite him. Michael sat in the center, the place their father used to occupy. Arthur noticed. He said nothing. For several minutes there was only the movement of paper. Then Arthur looked at each of them. "Before I begin, your father instructed me to say something." Daniel leaned back. "Of course he did." Arthur ignored him. "He anticipated that the terms of this document would surprise you." Michael's eyes narrowed. "Surprise." "He also anticipated that at least one of you might accuse me of fraud, coercion, incompetence, conspiracy, or professional misconduct." Daniel's smile disappeared. Arthur continued. "For that reason, the execution of this will was recorded on video in the presence of 2 physicians, 2 independent witnesses, and a forensic psychiatrist. Your father also submitted to 3 separate competency evaluations during the 6 months preceding his death." Vanessa stared at him. Why would he do that? Arthur's gaze rested on her for a moment. Because he knew his children. Nobody spoke. Then he unfolded the will. "My son Michael Richard Vale." Michael straightened. Arthur read. "To Michael, I leave the sum of $1 US. Silence. Michael blinked. "What?" Arthur continued. "My daughter Vanessa Elaine Vale. To Vanessa, I leave the sum of $1 US. Vanessa actually laughed. Once. A sharp involuntary sound. Arthur turned the page. My son Daniel Thomas Vale. To Daniel, I leave the sum of $1 US. Daniel's face went pale. There was a moment in which all three siblings simply stared at the attorney. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere beyond the woods. Michael rose first. That isn't funny. Arthur remained seated. I assure you, Michael, I am not attempting to be funny. My father owned $2 billion in assets. Approximately. And you're telling me he left us $3? Correct. Daniel slammed both hands on the table. Who gets the rest? Arthur did not immediately answer. That hesitation changed the room. Vanessa noticed it first. There's someone else. Arthur looked down at the document. Then he read the sentence that split the Vale family open. I leave the entirety of my remaining estate, including all controlling interests in Vale Meridian Holdings, all residential properties, all investment holdings, all personal effects except those otherwise designated, and all residual assets, to Miss Emma Grace Carlisle. No one moved. The name meant nothing to them. That made it worse. Michael spoke slowly. Who? Arthur repeated it. Emma Grace Carlisle. Daniel looked at Vanessa. Vanessa looked at Michael. Michael looked at Arthur. Who the hell is Emma Carlisle? Arthur closed the will. She is 28 years old. That wasn't my question. She lives in New Hampshire. Michael planted both hands on the table. Who is she? Arthur lifted his eyes. Your father's sole beneficiary. Michael swept a crystal tumbler from the table. It shattered against the fireplace. The security man moved one step forward. Arthur raised a hand and he stopped. Vanessa's voice was shaking. Was she his mistress? Not to my knowledge. A nurse? No. Secretary? No. Did she work for him? No. Daniel stared at the papers as if they were poisonous. Did he even know her? Arthur paused. Yes. The answer landed differently. Vanessa leaned toward him. How? I'm not authorized to answer that. Authorized by whom? He's dead. By Richard. He's dead. Her voice cracked through the room. Arthur's expression softened, but only slightly. Your father anticipated that question too. Michael stared. Then answer it. He left instructions that Miss Carlisle must be allowed to decide what she wishes to disclose. Daniel laughed bitterly. This is insane. Michael was already reaching for his phone. I'm calling Bennett. Arthur sighed. Your litigation counsel? My father was manipulated. You may challenge the will. We will. Richard expected that. Michael stopped dialing. Arthur slid a folder across the table. Inside were medical reports, competency examinations, signed witness declarations, dates, notarizations, video certifications. Enough documentation to make a lawsuit look less like a strategy and more like revenge. Vanessa picked up one of the reports. May 12th. That was 6 weeks before he died. Yes. He had stage 4 cancer. Yes. He was taking morphine. His medication was evaluated as part of the competency assessment. Daniel reached for another page. This psychiatrist says he had full decision-making capacity. All 3 psychiatrists reached the same conclusion. Michael threw the folder down. Then she manipulated him. Arthur's eyes became colder. Be careful. What? You don't know anything about Miss Carlisle. I know she stole $2 billion from my family. No, Arthur said quietly. You know that your father gave it to her. That shut Michael up. Arthur gathered his papers. The formal transfer process begins Monday. Until then, Vale Meridian's executive management will operate under the existing corporate bylaws. Michael's expression changed. The company is mine until then. No. What? Your father resigned you from your interim executive authority 48 hours before his death. Michael stared at him. That's impossible. Arthur produced another document. Vanessa looked at her brother. For the first time that day, she seemed genuinely shocked. You knew nothing about this? Michael snatched the paper. His eyes moved across the page. Then again. His signature was not there. Richard's was. The resignation was effective immediately upon Richard's death. Michael looked suddenly older. Daniel whispered, almost delighted despite the disaster. Dad fired you from beyond the grave. Michael turned on him. You think this is funny? No. I think it's very Dad. Arthur locked the will back inside his case. One more thing. The siblings looked at him. Your father requested that the reading be recorded. The recording will remain confidential unless there is litigation. Vanessa stared at the stenographer. You're recording us? Audio and transcript. Daniel swore. Arthur stood. Miss Carlisle arrives tomorrow morning. All three siblings froze. Michael's voice dropped. Here. Yes. In this house. Arthur picked up his case. It belongs to her. For the first time since Richard Vale's death, none of his children had anything to say. Emma Carlisle arrived at Blackwood House at 9:07 the next morning in a 12-year-old blue Honda. Vanessa watched from the upstairs window. That's her. Daniel stood beside her holding coffee. The Honda had a dent over the rear wheel. One headlight was slightly clouded. The woman who stepped out wore dark trousers, flat shoes and a beige coat that looked like something bought because it lasted. Not because it impressed anyone. She had long brown hair pulled back loosely. No designer bag. No sunglasses. No jewelry except a small silver chain around her neck. 28. Maybe 29. Vanessa expected beauty. She had spent the night imagining a calculating seductress. Someone glamorous enough to make an old billionaire humiliate his own children. Emma was attractive, but not in the way Vanessa had expected. What unsettled her was how ordinary the woman looked. Daniel frowned. She doesn't look like a gold digger. Vanessa glanced at him. What does a gold digger look like? I don't know. More expensive. Michael entered behind them. He had not slept. His tie was crooked, and there were dark shadows under his eyes. My investigator ran her. Vanessa turned quickly. You already hired someone? I hired two. Daniel whistled. What did they find? Michael handed them a thin file. Emma Grace Carlisle. Age 28. Born in Vermont. Mother. Rebecca Carlisle, deceased. Father. Listed as unknown. Occupation. Elementary school teacher. Annual income. $46,000. No criminal history. No major debt. No lawsuits. No known connection to Richard Vale. Vanessa read the page twice. That's it. She teaches 4th grade. Daniel looked toward the window. So Dad gave $2 billion to a schoolteacher. Michael's voice was low. There's something missing. What? Her mother. Vanessa looked down. Rebecca Carlisle. Died 11 years ago. Age 43. Cause of death. Motor vehicle accident. Michael tapped the file. No marriage records. No property. No significant employment trail before Emma was 8 years old. Daniel shrugged. So people don't just appear. A car door closed outside. Emma looked up at the mansion. And Vanessa saw something on her face that made her step closer to the glass. Emma was crying. Not dramatically. Not theatrically. One hand rose to cover her mouth. Her shoulders trembled. For several seconds she simply stood in the driveway staring at Blackwood House as tears ran down her cheeks. Daniel's sarcasm vanished. Has she been here before? Michael said nothing. They went downstairs. Arthur Kessler was already waiting in the entrance hall. When Emma walked through the front doors, she wiped her face quickly. I'm sorry, she said. Arthur stepped toward her. You don't need to apologize. She looked around. Her eyes moved over the staircase, the portraits, the marble floor. Then stopped at a small painting near the library. A winter landscape. Vanessa noticed. Emma stared at it for several seconds. You know that painting? Vanessa asked. Emma turned. That was when the two women saw each other for the first time. Emma's expression changed. Not fear. Recognition. Vanessa felt it instantly. Have we met? Emma shook her head. No. Too quickly. Michael stepped forward. I'm Michael Vale. I know. Of course you do. Arthur intervened. Michael. But Emma kept looking at him. There was something almost sad in her eyes. That made Michael angrier than arrogance would have. My father gave you everything. Emma swallowed. I know. Why? I don't know. Daniel barked a laugh from the staircase. Great. We're off to a strong start. Emma looked at him and froze. The color left her face. Daniel noticed. What? She shook her head. Nothing. You just looked at me like you'd seen a ghost. I'm sorry. You keep saying that. Arthur stepped between them. Richard asked that we meet in the library. They moved down the corridor. Emma walked last. When she passed the framed photograph of the Vale family taken 23 years earlier, she stopped. Richard stood in the center. Michael beside him, already an adult. Vanessa 18. Daniel 13. Their mother, Catherine, still alive then, her hand resting on Richard's arm. Emma stared at the photograph. Her fingers touched the silver chain around her neck. Vanessa saw the movement. What is that? Emma looked down. What? Your necklace. Emma hesitated, then pulled the chain out from beneath her blouse. A small silver pendant hung from it, oval-shaped. Old. Vanessa's stomach tightened. She had seen that pendant before. Not exactly that pendant. One identical to it. Her mother had owned one. Catherine Vale had worn it every day until the summer before her death. Then it had disappeared. Vanessa walked closer. Where did you get that? My mother. Arthur's face changed. Only for an instant. But Michael saw it. Arthur? The lawyer looked away. Vanessa's voice sharpened. Where did your mother get it? I don't know. Open it. Emma stared at her. What? The pendant. It's a locket, isn't it? Emma's hand closed around it. No. Vanessa stepped closer. Open it. I said no. Michael moved between them. Why not? Because it belonged to my mother. And my father just gave you everything he owned. That doesn't give you the right. It gives me the right to ask questions. No, Emma said. It gives you a reason to want answers. Michael stared at her. The distinction seemed to surprise him. Then Arthur spoke. Enough. Everyone turned. He looked exhausted. Richard did not bring Emma here to be interrogated. Michael's eyes narrowed. You're protecting her. I'm carrying out your father's instructions. Same thing. Arthur opened the library doors. Inside, Richard's chair still sat behind his desk. Emma stopped at the threshold. Her breathing changed. She stared at the chair, then at the shelves, then toward the tall window overlooking the lake. Daniel noticed. You've definitely been here before. Emma shook her head. No. You knew where the library was. Arthur said library. You stopped before he opened the door. Emma looked trapped. Michael saw it too. He stepped closer. You know this house. No. You knew the painting. No. You recognized Vanessa. I didn't. You recognized Daniel. I didn't. Michael pointed toward her chest. And you're wearing my mother's necklace. Emma's eyes flashed. This was my mother's. Then maybe your mother stole it. Arthur slammed his hand on the desk. The sound shocked everyone. I said enough. Arthur Kessler almost never raised his voice. Now his face had gone gray. He looked at Michael, then Emma, then the locket, and for the first time he seemed afraid. Michael saw it. What do you know? Arthur slowly sat down. More than I am permitted to tell you. Daniel moved toward him. Dad's dead. Stop talking like he's going to walk through the door and fire you. Arthur gave him a tired look. In a way, Daniel, he still can. He opened the leather case. Inside was a sealed envelope. Richard's handwriting covered the front. To be opened only in the presence of my children and Emma Carlisle. Arthur placed it on the desk. Emma stared at the handwriting. Her lips parted. Michael noticed. You've seen his handwriting before. Emma did not answer. Arthur broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a small brass key. He read silently. His expression tightened. What? Vanessa demanded. Arthur looked at Emma, then at the three siblings. Your father has left one final instruction. Michael laughed coldly. Of course. Arthur placed the brass key on the desk. There is a locked room beneath the east wing. Daniel frowned. There's no room beneath the east wing. Yes, Arthur said. There is. Michael looked toward him. What room? One your father had sealed 22 years ago. Vanessa went still. 22 years. The year their mother died. Arthur continued. Richard ordered that no one enter it while he was alive. Emma's face had gone completely pale. Vanessa noticed. You know about the room? Emma whispered. No. Arthur unfolded the page. According to Richard, everything necessary to understand his will is inside. Michael grabbed the key. Then what are we waiting for? Arthur did not let go. There is a condition. Michael stared at his hand. What condition? All four of you must enter together. Daniel scoffed. Why? Arthur read the final line, then stopped. For several seconds he seemed unwilling to say it aloud. Michael pulled the letter from his hand. His eyes found the sentence. Whatever he read drained the anger from his face. Vanessa grabbed the page. Her breath caught. Daniel came closer. Written beneath Richard Vale's signature were 13 words. If Emma Carlisle refuses to enter the room, the entire estate is to be destroyed. Daniel read it twice. Destroyed. Arthur nodded. Liquidated. The company sold. The properties sold. The proceeds transferred to multiple charitable trusts. Michael looked at Emma. You knew about this? No. You're going downstairs. Emma backed away. No. Michael stared. What did you say? I said no. Vanessa looked at her. $2 billion disappears if you don't enter that room. I understand. No, I don't think you do. Emma's eyes filled with tears. I can't. Arthur stood very slowly. Emma. She looked at him, and something passed between them. Something the Vale children were not meant to understand. Michael saw it. His voice dropped. Why can't you go into that room? Emma looked toward Richard's empty chair, then toward the old family photograph visible through the library doors. When she spoke, her voice was barely louder than a whisper. Because my mother told me never to come back to this house. The room went silent. Vanessa felt the floor shift beneath her. Michael stepped closer. What? Emma closed her eyes. A tear slid down her cheek. My mother brought me here once. When? Emma opened her eyes. When I was 6. 22 years ago. The year the room had been sealed. The year Catherine Vale died. Daniel's face changed. Michael no longer looked angry. He looked afraid. Vanessa touched the wall for balance. What happened here? Emma looked at the three of them, then at the brass key in Michael's hand. My mother made me promise I would never tell anyone. Tell anyone what? Emma's gaze moved slowly toward the corridor leading to the east wing. And then she said the words that none of Richard Vale's children would ever forget. That your father wasn't the person in this family she was afraid of. For several seconds nobody moved. Then Michael laughed. It wasn't amusement. It was the sound of a man discovering that reality had become more dangerous than anger. Someone in our family, he said. Who? Emma looked at the floor. I was 6. I didn't understand everything. But you remember enough to be afraid. Yes. Vanessa stepped closer. Was it our mother? Emma's eyes lifted sharply. That reaction was enough. Daniel whispered. Jesus. No, Emma said quickly. I didn't say that. You didn't have to, Michael replied. Arthur Kessler took the brass key from the desk. We should go downstairs. Emma backed toward the door. I told you. I'm not going. Michael blocked her path. You walk out. Everything gets liquidated. I never asked for his money. That's easy to say when you've already inherited it. Emma stared at him. You think I came here because I wanted a mansion? I think people have killed for less. Arthur's voice hardened. Michael. But Emma didn't flinch. Then maybe you should ask why your father was willing to lose $2 billion just to make sure the four of us entered that room together. That silenced him. Daniel looked toward the dark corridor. She has a point. Michael hated that she did. 10 minutes later, all 5 of them stood in the east wing. The corridor ended at an old servant's staircase. Arthur descended first. At the bottom was a wine cellar. Michael frowned. I've been down here 100 times. Arthur walked past the racks to a stone wall. Then he reached behind a wooden cabinet and pressed something. A faint metallic click sounded. Part of the shelving shifted. Daniel stared. You have got to be kidding me. Behind it was a narrow steel door. Vanessa's pulse quickened. How long have you known about this? Arthur inserted the key. 22 years. Michael grabbed his arm. You knew. I knew the room existed. I never entered it. Why? Because your father made me promise. Michael released him in disgust. You spent your entire life keeping that man's secrets. Arthur looked at him. Yes. Then he turned the key. The lock opened. Emma stopped breathing. A smell emerged from the darkness. Dust, cold stone, old paper, and something else. Lavender. Emma suddenly gripped the wall. No. Vanessa turned. What? My mother used that perfume. Arthur switched on the light. A single bulb flickered overhead. The room was smaller than expected. No treasure. No hidden cash. No secret vault. Just a table. 4 chairs. Metal filing cabinets. A tape recorder. And dozens of cardboard boxes. On the far wall hung a photograph. Vanessa walked toward it first. Then stopped. Oh my God. It showed Richard Vale standing beside a young woman. She was perhaps 25. Brown hair. Green eyes. She was holding a little girl. Emma. But it was the woman's face that made Vanessa feel sick. She knew her. Not personally. From somewhere deeper. A memory. A summer afternoon. Her mother screaming downstairs. A woman crying in the driveway. Vanessa turned toward Emma. Rebecca. Emma nodded. My mother. Daniel studied the photograph. Dad knew her. Michael's jaw tightened. Obviously. No, Vanessa whispered. I knew her too. Everyone looked at her. I'd forgotten. She touched the photograph. She came here once. Maybe more than once. When? Michael asked. Vanessa closed her eyes. Right before Mom died. Emma's face changed. Arthur walked to the table. There were 4 envelopes on it. Each bore a name. Michael. Vanessa. Daniel. Emma. And beneath them sat a 5th envelope. To be opened last. Daniel reached for his. Arthur stopped him. Wait. A cassette was already inside the recorder. A handwritten label read. For my children. Michael pressed play. Static filled the room. Then Richard Vale spoke. His dead father's voice hit Daniel so hard that he sat down. If you are hearing this, I am dead. Michael stared at the machine. Richard continued. And if Arthur followed my instructions, you hate me. A pause. You should. Vanessa covered her mouth. There are things children believe about their parents because believing anything else would destroy the world they grew up in. The tape hissed. For 22 years, I allowed you to believe a lie. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Michael whispered. What lie? As if answering him, Richard continued. Rebecca Carlisle was not my mistress. Daniel looked at Emma. Richard's voice became strained. She was my employee. My friend. And eventually, the only person brave enough to tell me what was happening inside my own house. Vanessa slowly lowered her hand. What was happening? Richard continued. Michael, Vanessa, Daniel. Your mother did not die the way you were told. Vanessa stumbled backward. No. Daniel stood. What? Everyone knew the story. Catherine Vale had died after driving her car through a guardrail during a storm. An accident. Richard had identified the body. The funeral had been closed casket. Vanessa rushed to the recorder. That's a lie. She hit stop. Silence crashed over them. Michael stared at her. Turn it back on. No. Vanessa. Our mother died in a car accident. Emma whispered. My mother said there were 2 women in the car. Vanessa turned. What? Emma looked terrified by her own words. She used to have nightmares. Michael approached her. What did she say? I didn't understand it when I was little. Try. Emma swallowed. She would wake up saying, I should have pulled her out. Vanessa's face drained. Daniel asked. Pulled who out? Emma looked at the photograph. Catherine. Vanessa slapped her. The sound cracked through the room. Everyone froze. Emma touched her cheek. Vanessa was immediately horrified by what she had done, but grief was already turning into rage. Don't say my mother's name. Emma's eyes hardened. My mother spent the rest of her life terrified because of what happened to yours. Then tell us what happened. I don't know. Emma's shout echoed off the stone walls. Tears ran down her face. I was 6 years old. My mother changed our names, moved us 3 times, checked every car behind us, and made me sleep in closets when she thought someone had found us. Do you think she explained everything? Nobody answered. Emma pulled the locket from her neck. She gave me this the night before she died. Vanessa stared at it. Emma opened it. Inside were 2 tiny photographs. One was Rebecca. The other was Catherine Vale. Vanessa stopped breathing. Daniel whispered. Why would your mother carry a picture of our mother? Emma looked at him. Because they were sisters. Silence. Michael shook his head. No. Emma handed Vanessa the locket. On the back of Catherine's photograph were 4 faded handwritten words. Cat, my little sister. Vanessa stared at them. Our mother had no sister. She did, Arthur said. Everyone turned. Michael's expression became murderous. You knew. Arthur nodded. Rebecca Carlisle was born Rebecca Mercer. Your grandfather disowned her when she was 19. Why? Arthur hesitated. Because she became pregnant. Emma frowned. My mother had me at 15 years later. Arthur looked at her. I didn't say she was pregnant with you. The room changed again. Daniel stepped forward. Then what happened to the baby? Arthur looked toward Richard's envelopes. I believe that is what your father wants you to discover. Michael grabbed his envelope and tore it open. Inside was a photograph. He stared at it. His face went white. What is it? Vanessa asked. He turned it around. The picture showed Rebecca at perhaps 20 years old, lying in a hospital bed. She was holding a newborn. On the back Richard had written, April 14, 1975. Michael's birthday. Michael dropped the photograph. No. Vanessa stared at her brother. Daniel looked between Michael and Emma. No way. Michael picked up the picture again. That proves nothing. Arthur said nothing. That proves nothing. Then Emma noticed something inside Michael's envelope. A folded laboratory report. She pulled it out. Michael snatched it from her. His eyes raced across the page. DNA paternity and kinship analysis. The report was dated 6 months earlier. Michael read the conclusion. Once. Twice. Then his hands began to shake. Vanessa whispered, Michael. He looked at Arthur. What did he do? Arthur said nothing. Michael threw the report onto the table. Daniel picked it up. His mouth fell open. According to the test, Richard Vale was not Michael's biological father. But that wasn't the worst part. Daniel read the next line. Rebecca Carlisle was Michael's biological mother. Vanessa sat down. Emma stared at Michael. Michael stared back at her. For 28 years Emma had believed she was Rebecca's only child. For 51 years, Michael had believed Catherine Vale was his mother. Both were wrong. Daniel whispered. So Michael is. Emma finished it. My brother. Michael suddenly grabbed the tape recorder and hurled it against the wall. Plastic shattered. The cassette skidded across the floor. Enough. Arthur stepped toward him. But Michael pointed at Emma. This is exactly what she wants. Emma recoiled. You think I knew? You show up with my mother's necklace. Our mother. Michael's expression twisted. Don't. Emma stared at him. Our mother. Michael crossed the room so quickly Daniel had to step between them. Say it again. Michael. Get out of my way. And then Vanessa screamed. Not from fear. From discovery. Everyone turned. She was kneeling beside the broken tape recorder. When Michael had thrown it, the machine had struck the wall. A thin wooden panel had cracked open behind it. There was something hidden inside. Another cassette. Unlike the first, this one had no message from Richard. It had a date. October 17, 2004. The night Catherine Vale died. Beneath the date were 2 words. Original recording. Arthur looked genuinely shocked. I didn't know that was there. Daniel picked up the cassette. If this is original, what were we just listening to? No, Emma whispered. She was staring into the opening behind the wall. There's something else. She reached inside. Her fingers closed around a small plastic evidence bag. Inside was a blood-stained gold cufflink. The initials engraved into it were unmistakable. V. Daniel Thomas Vale. Daniel stared at it. His face went blank. Vanessa looked at her younger brother. Daniel. He backed away. I've never seen that. Emma turned the evidence bag over. A handwritten note was attached to the back. Richard's handwriting. Only one sentence. Daniel was there that night. He just doesn't remember. Daniel stopped moving. And suddenly, for the first time in 22 years, he did remember. Rain against a windshield. His mother screaming. Rebecca dragging a little girl through the woods. Blood on his shirt. And his father kneeling in front of 13-year-old Daniel, gripping his face with both hands and saying, "Listen to me, son. When the police come, you were asleep all night." ***. Daniel looked at his siblings. Then at Emma. His voice broke. "I remember your mother." Emma went pale. Daniel's next words were barely audible. "And I remember who was driving the car." End of part 2. Daniel stared at the blood-stained cufflink as if it had unlocked a door inside his head. "I was in the back seat." Vanessa shook her head. "No. You were home that night." "That's what Dad told everyone." Michael stepped closer. "Who was driving?" Daniel closed his eyes. Rain. Headlights. His mother's voice. Rebecca crying. A 6-year-old girl curled beside him. "Emma." Daniel opened his eyes and looked at her. "You were in the car too." Emma recoiled. "That's impossible." "No. Your mother brought you to the house. Mom and Rebecca were arguing. Dad wasn't there yet." Vanessa grabbed his arm. "Who was driving?" Daniel swallowed. "Mom." Emma frowned. "But my mother said she should have pulled Catherine out." "She did." The memory returned in fragments. Catherine driving too fast. Rebecca begging her to stop. Catherine screaming that Richard had ruined everything. Then another car appeared behind them. Black. Following closely. "Someone was chasing us," Daniel whispered. "Who?" Michael demanded. "I couldn't see." "The cassette." Vanessa snatched the original recording from the floor. "We need to hear this." The recorder was broken, but Arthur remembered an old stereo upstairs. 20 minutes later they were gathered in Richard's study. Arthur inserted the tape. Static. Rain. Then Catherine's voice. "You think Richard will protect you?" Rebecca answered. "I'm not asking him to protect me. You should never have come back." "I came back for Michael." Michael stiffened. On the recording, Catherine laughed bitterly. "He's my son." "No," Rebecca said. "He's the child father took from me." Michael closed his eyes. Then Catherine said something that made everyone freeze. "If Michael learns the truth, he'll learn what Richard did to his real father." Michael leaned toward the stereo. "My real father?" A horn blared on the recording. Rebecca screamed. Then Catherine shouted. "He found us." The car accelerated. Crash. Glass breaking. The recording dissolved into screaming. And then another voice appeared. A man's voice. "Catherine." Daniel grabbed the desk. "I know that voice." Michael looked at him. "Dad." Daniel shook his head. "No." The tape continued. Rebecca was crying. "Stay away from her." The man answered. "You should have stayed gone, Rebecca." Vanessa went white. She knew the voice too. "No." Arthur suddenly reached for the stereo. Michael caught his wrist. "Don't." Arthur's composure finally broke. "You don't understand." Vanessa stared at him. "You knew he was there." Arthur lowered his eyes. The voice belonged to Charles Mercer. Catherine and Rebecca's father. Their grandfather. The man they had been told died 3 years before Catherine's accident. "He wasn't dead," Vanessa whispered. Arthur shook his head. "No." "Then whose funeral did we attend?" "There was no body. Richard arranged the memorial." Michael stared at him. "Why?" "Because Charles Mercer was supposed to disappear." The tape continued. A car door slammed. Catherine groaned. Then Charles said, "Where is the girl?" Emma stopped breathing. "Not Catherine. Not Rebecca. The girl. Her." Rebecca screamed. "Run, Emma." Emma suddenly stumbled backward. A memory flashed through her mind. Wet trees. Bare feet. A man chasing her. And Richard Vale lifting her into his arms. Emma covered her mouth. He saved me. Arthur looked at her. Yes. Michael turned sharply. You knew. Richard found Emma in the woods. Rebecca survived. Catherine did not. Daniel whispered. And Grandpa? Arthur's answer came quietly. He disappeared that night. Michael stared at the final envelope they had brought upstairs. To be opened last. He tore it open. Inside was a death certificate. Charles Mercer. But the date of death was not 25 years ago. It was 8 months ago. Vanessa stared. He was alive all this time? Arthur nodded. And Richard knew? Yes. Emma noticed another sheet. A recent photograph. An old man leaving a private medical clinic. Charles Mercer. Beside him stood Richard Vale. And beside Richard, Vanessa. Everyone looked at her. Vanessa backed away. I can explain. Michael's face hardened. You met him. Once. When? Last year. Why? Vanessa began crying. Because he contacted me. Daniel stared at his sister. What did he want? Vanessa looked at Emma. He told me Dad was leaving everything to her. Emma froze. Michael whispered. You knew about the will? No. I thought he was lying. What did you do? Vanessa didn't answer. Michael grabbed her shoulders. What did you do? I told Dad. And? Vanessa's face collapsed. Dad said if Charles ever contacted me again, I was supposed to call one number. Arthur went still. What number? Vanessa whispered it. Arthur's face drained of color. That wasn't Richard's number. Whose was it? Arthur looked toward the photograph. Charles Mercer's private investigator. Silence. Emma stared at Vanessa. You told the man hunting my mother's family where Richard was? I didn't know. Then Michael noticed the date on Charles Mercer's death certificate. He compared it with Richard's medical records. His eyes narrowed. Arthur. Yes. Charles died 8 months ago. Yes. Dad changed his will 6 months ago. Arthur nodded. Michael looked at Emma. So Dad waited until Charles was dead before making her his heir. Nobody spoke. Emma slowly turned the death certificate over. There was handwriting on the back. Not Richard's. Rebecca's. Emma recognized it immediately. Her hands began shaking as she read. If Charles is dead, Richard must finally tell Emma who her father is. Daniel stared at her. Michael looked toward Arthur. But Arthur was already backing away, because he knew what came next. Emma raised her eyes. Who was my father? Arthur said nothing. Who? Arthur closed his eyes. Richard Vale. Emma froze. Michael whispered. Then she's my sister, Daniel said. But Arthur shook his head. No. They stared at him. Arthur's next words shattered everything they thought they had discovered. Richard was Emma's father. He looked directly at Michael. But Richard Vale was not your father. Michael's face went blank. Arthur continued. Your father was Charles Mercer. And suddenly the $1 inheritance no longer looked like punishment. It looked like Richard had been trying to separate his children from the descendants of one man. A man everyone believed was finally dead. Then the telephone rang. Arthur answered. He listened for 5 seconds. His face turned white. What? Michael demanded. Arthur slowly lowered the receiver. The cemetery called. Emma felt cold. Why? Arthur looked at her. They opened Charles Mercer's grave this morning. A pause. The coffin was empty. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Then Michael took the telephone from Arthur's hand. Who opened the grave? Arthur swallowed. The county. Why? There was a court order. Requested by whom? Arthur looked at Emma. Richard. Daniel stared at him. Our dead father ordered Grandpa's grave opened? No. Richard filed the request 3 weeks before he died. Vanessa gripped the back of a chair. So he knew. Arthur nodded. He suspected Charles was still alive. Michael laughed once bitterly. Of course he did. Emma looked at the death certificate again. If Charles wasn't in the coffin, whose death did Richard certify? No one's, Arthur said. The certificate was based on records from a private hospice. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Fake records? Possibly. Vanessa turned toward Arthur. And you never checked? I had no reason to suspect them. Michael slammed the phone down. We do now. At that exact moment, something shattered downstairs. Everyone froze. Then came another sound. A door closing. Daniel ran first. They raced down the staircase and found the front hall empty. But the glass case beside Richard's portrait had been smashed. Inside it, one object was missing. Richard's old pocket watch. Vanessa whispered. Why would anyone steal that? Emma stared at the broken glass. Because she remembered the watch. Not from the house. From her childhood. Her mother had once shown her a photograph of Richard holding the same watch. On the back Rebecca had written, "He keeps the key where time stopped." Emma's pulse jumped. The watch isn't valuable. Michael turned. How do you know? It's a key. Arthur went pale. To what? Emma looked toward the east wing. I don't know. Daniel checked the front door. Locked. The side entrance too. Michael's expression hardened. So whoever took it was already inside. Vanessa whispered. Charles. Arthur shook his head. He'd be nearly 80. That doesn't mean he couldn't walk through a door. Then Daniel noticed something on the marble floor. Mud. A single wet footprint. Then another. Leading toward Richard's private study. They followed the trail. The study door was open. On Richard's desk lay a photograph that had not been there before. For children. Michael. Vanessa. Daniel. And a baby none of them recognized. On the back, written in black ink. 4 heirs. 1 lie. Michael's face tightened. Who is the baby? Arthur looked at the photograph and nearly collapsed. Vanessa caught him. You know. Arthur said nothing. Daniel stepped closer. Who is it? Arthur looked at Emma. Then at Michael. The child was born before Emma. Emma frowned. My mother only had Michael and me. No. Arthur's voice shook. Rebecca had another child. Michael stared. Who? Arthur closed his eyes. A daughter. Vanessa took the photograph. What happened to her? She disappeared when she was 3 months old. Emma's blood ran cold. Disappeared. Charles took her. Why? Arthur looked toward Richard's portrait. Because Rebecca tried to expose him. Michael's jaw tightened. Expose him for what? Arthur hesitated. Charles had been moving money through Richard's companies for years. Hidden accounts. Shell corporations. Bribes. Daniel stared. So Grandpa was stealing from Dad? No, Arthur said. It was worse. He looked directly at them. Charles helped build Richard's fortune. Silence. Vanessa whispered. With dirty money? Yes. Arthur continued. And when Richard tried to cut him out, Charles threatened the family. Emma looked at the baby in the photograph. What was her name? Arthur didn't answer. Then a voice came from the doorway. Eleanor. Everyone spun around. A woman stood there. Mid-40s. Dark coat. Gray eyes. Calm expression. None of them had heard her enter. She held Richard's pocket watch in one hand. Michael stepped forward. Who are you? The woman smiled faintly. Apparently, the one child your father decided not to mention. Emma stared at her. No. The woman looked at the photograph. My name is Eleanor Mercer. Arthur whispered. That's impossible. She turned to him. You told Richard the same thing 20 years ago. Arthur backed away. Michael looked between them. You know her. Arthur's face had gone white. I thought she was dead. Eleanor smiled. Richard wanted everyone to think that. Emma stepped closer. You're my sister? Eleanor studied her face. For the first time her expression softened. Yes. Emma's eyes filled. Why didn't my mother tell me? Because she thought I was dead too. Daniel looked at the watch. What does that open? Eleanor's expression changed. A safe. Where? In Richard's office downtown. Michael grabbed his coat. Then we're going. Eleanor didn't move. No. Michael stared. Why not? Because somebody already opened it. She placed the watch on the desk. And whatever Richard kept inside is gone. Vanessa whispered. What was in it? Eleanor looked at all four of them. Proof. Of what? That Charles Mercer is alive. Emma felt the room shrink. Eleanor continued. And that Richard Vale didn't die from cancer. Arthur went rigid. Michael stepped toward her. What did you just say? Eleanor reached into her coat and placed a medical report on the desk. Richard was terminally ill. She looked at Emma. But cancer didn't kill him. Daniel picked up the report. His hands began to shake. Toxicology findings. A rare cardiac toxin. Fatal concentration. Vanessa covered her mouth. Someone poisoned him. Eleanor nodded. Michael's eyes moved slowly around the room. Who had access to him? Arthur answered quietly. All of us. Then Emma noticed something handwritten at the bottom of the toxicology report. Richard's handwriting. One sentence. If I am dead before September, one of my children did it. Nobody breathed. Michael looked at Vanessa. Vanessa looked at Daniel. Daniel looked at Emma. And Eleanor smiled sadly. You thought the inheritance was the mystery. She shook her head. It was bait. Eleanor's words hung in the study like smoke. Michael looked at the toxicology report again. One of his children. Vanessa shook her head. Dad had 4 children. Everyone turned toward Emma. Emma recoiled. I barely knew him. Daniel's eyes moved to Eleanor. And she's his daughter too? Eleanor gave a cold smile. No. Richard wasn't my father. Arthur suddenly sat down. That movement drew every eye in the room. Michael understood first. You know who poisoned him? Arthur said nothing. Arthur. The old lawyer looked toward Richard's portrait. Then whispered. Yes. Vanessa stepped forward. Who? Arthur reached into his case and removed one final envelope. I was instructed to open this only if Eleanor returned. Eleanor's confidence vanished. What? Arthur broke the seal. Inside was a flash drive and a letter. He read aloud. Charles always believed blood made people predictable. He was wrong. Michael impatiently grabbed the letter. Richard's message continued. The dollar was never punishment. It was protection. Daniel frowned. Protection from what? Arthur looked at Eleanor. From Charles. Then he inserted the flash drive into Richard's computer. A video appeared. Richard Vale sat alone in the same study. Thin. Dying. But unmistakably lucid. If you're watching this, Charles found a way back. Emma stepped closer to the screen. Richard looked directly into the camera. I left Emma everything because she was the only child Charles could not legally reach. Michael stared. Richard continued. Michael carries Charles's blood. Vanessa unknowingly signed documents connecting her to one of his shell corporations. Daniel's debts were purchased years ago by companies Charles controlled. Daniel's face collapsed. And Eleanor. Richard paused. Works for him. Everyone turned. Eleanor reached inside her coat. Michael lunged. Too late. She pulled a pistol. Don't move. Emma stared at her. You lied. Eleanor's eyes hardened. About many things. Are you really my sister? A flicker of pain crossed Eleanor's face. Yes. That was the one truth. Arthur whispered. You poisoned Richard. Eleanor shook her head. No. Then she aimed the gun at Vanessa. She did. Vanessa froze. Michael turned slowly. What? Vanessa began shaking her head. No. Eleanor laughed. Tell them. I didn't know. Tell them. Vanessa burst into tears. Charles contacted me last year. He said Dad had destroyed our family. He gave me medication to put in Dad's tea. Emma whispered. Poison. I thought it would make him sick. Charles said it would make Dad change the will before he died. Daniel stared at his sister. You poisoned him for money? I didn't know it would kill him. Richard's video was still playing. His voice filled the silence. Vanessa, if you gave me what Charles sent you, I forgive you. She looked at the screen. Her knees nearly gave way. I knew what it was by the second dose. Vanessa sobbed. Richard continued. I stopped taking it. Eleanor's face changed. Michael looked at the toxicology report. Then how did he die? Richard answered. The toxin in my blood was administered by me. Nobody moved. Emma whispered. He poisoned himself? No, Arthur said. He chose the hour of his death. Richard continued. My cancer had reached its final stage. I had days, perhaps hours. I needed Charles to believe his plan had worked. Eleanor stared at the screen, and suddenly understood. Richard had staged his own murder. Not to escape death. To expose the living. The study doors slammed shut. A lock clicked. Eleanor spun around. Michael smiled grimly. Dad really did know you'd come back. Sirens rose beyond the gates. Eleanor rushed to the window. Police cars were entering the estate. Arthur lifted his phone. The moment the flash drive opened, Richard's evidence was transmitted to federal investigators. Eleanor pointed the gun at Emma. Move. Emma didn't. You spent your whole life working for Charles. You know nothing about my life. I know Mom thought you were dead. That hit her. Emma stepped closer. She mourned you. Eleanor's hand trembled. She left me. No. Charles took you. He raised me. He used you. Stop. He turned you into exactly what he needed. Stop. The gun shook. Then another voice came from the hallway. Eleanor. An old man stood beyond the glass doors. Charles Mercer. Alive. Smiling. Eleanor stared at him. Grandfather. Charles looked at her gun. Shoot the girl. Emma went still. Do it. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. And in that moment she finally understood. He had not come to rescue her. He had come to make sure she took the blame. Eleanor lowered the weapon. No. Charles's smile disappeared. Police flooded the corridor. He ran. He made it 6 steps. Then Daniel tackled him against the marble floor. 22 years of lies ended beneath Richard Vale's portrait. 3 months later, the will remained unchanged. Emma Carlisle inherited everything. And then she did something none of them expected. She kept the company, but she divided its voting control equally among herself, Michael, Vanessa, and Daniel. Vanessa faced criminal charges, though Emma testified that Charles had manipulated her. Daniel entered treatment for his debts and addictions. Michael left the chairman's office he had spent his life believing he deserved. And Eleanor agreed to testify against Charles in exchange for a reduced sentence. On the anniversary of Richard's death, Emma gathered them at Blackwood House. 4 envelopes waited on the table. Inside each was a check. $1. Daniel laughed when he saw his. You've got to be kidding. Emma smiled. No. Michael looked at her. What's this for? Emma placed Richard's final handwritten note between them. They read it together. I gave each of you $1 because inheritance should never tell a child what they are worth. Below it was one last sentence. If there is anything left of this family, build it yourselves. For a long time none of them spoke. Then Michael placed his dollar in the center of the table. Daniel added his. Vanessa followed. Emma placed down hers. $4. The entire inheritance that actually mattered. Not because it was valuable, but because for the first time in their lives none of them was fighting over it. Outside, morning light spread across Blackwood House. And behind them, Richard Vale's portrait watched over a family he had almost destroyed trying to protect. Emma looked at it one final time. Then she turned the frame toward the wall. Some secrets deserved to be remembered. Others deserved to end. And for the first time in 22 years, the Vale family walked out of that room without carrying either.